Hey guys, Evan from PC Gamer, and I'm here with Logan Decker.
Howdy.
And TJ Hafer.
Hey.
So whenever a shooter comes out, we kind of have this recurring conversation around the office about how the guns in that shooter feel and how they compare to classic gaming weapons. And I sort of wanted to sit down this week and capture some of that and just talk about what our personal favorite guns are in video games. Logan, why don't you kick us off?
Absolutely. Easily the gun I treasure the most, the one I would put over my mantle on my fireplace at home, is the steak gun from Painkiller.
Yeah.
Super fancy?
Yeah.
No, it's not. Okay, it's a gun. It shoots steaks. It shoots them in an arc. Very simple arc. It is not affected by stuff like weather or wind or anything like that. But the idea is that Painkiller kind of throws you out on these levels, just throws hundreds of these creatures at you and just says, you know what? You take care of it. I'm stepping back. You deal with it. So the level design is actually not level design, really, almost. It's just do whatever you want. So you take the steak gun out, and suddenly you're like an artist, because you aim it at these things, and you're circling them, because the steak gun does reload very slowly. It does not have a rapid rate of fire. So you have to circle these guys, and if you pop them right in the shoulder, they go flying backwards in this, head over, like that. It's just spectacular. And you can nail them to walls, you can nail them to ceilings, you can nail them to coffins. It's just spectacular, and it pays off over and over and over again.
It's really the physics that makes that gun work, I think.
Absolutely.
I mean, if
definitely.
it didn't shoot parabolically, if it was just a straight shooting weapon, it would be totally different. It's kind of weird how that's kind of the difference.
And it takes a while. It's not even a fast weapon, right?
Yeah.
So it takes a while. So you actually watch the steak sometimes go, and just capping somebody right in the forehead, is just, you just get that sort of like, oh, yeah.
That's significant, though. I mean, if you've ever played basketball or something, and just that feeling of admiring your shot.
Yeah, and you're just watching, you're like,
yeah,
yes! And then you do that 60 more times in a minute, which is just, I never got tired of it throughout the entire game. I think any one of the 4 times I played it, and it still pays off to this day.
That's Painkiller.
Oh, and the wonderful sound effect it makes. Whoosh, whoosh, oh, yes.
Terrific.
I love it.
For sure.
TJ, what's one of your favorites?
Well, if I think about like the gun that is like my friend, that has been my friend, I have to go with the Mattock, actually, from Mass Effect 2 and 3, which almost kind of felt like an extra party member. It's a game that's about relationships with your party members. It's a semi-automatic rifle, and if you're really good with it, it makes you feel overpowered, but you feel like you're working to be overpowered, because you have to keep the beat on, and you have to click really fast, and you just put tons and tons of damage downrange. You're talking about sound effects, which I think is a huge deal.
Oh yeah.
As far as what guns feel good to use and which ones don't. So I remember, using that gun pretty much all the way through Mass Effect 2, and then I made a point to look up a guide on where you find it in Mass Effect 3 because I wanted to get it back as soon as possible. And it has a story behind it. It was like a miner's weapon, and they converted it for military use or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm the guy that's looking up the history on individual guns.
You're a Codex fiend.
The Mass Effect series. Yeah. I just really enjoyed the playstyle with that. Mass Effect 2 gave you a little bit more freedom to try every single weapon than the first one did, and that was the one I stuck with and had the most fun with.
Cool.
It is a lot about sound effects, just getting it just right, and it's just, to me, it's more evocative even than the graphics, Just hearing that perfect sound that matches up perfectly with the gun.
Yeah, I mean, that's what conveys the personality of the weapon, I think. So for me, this is kind of a strange one, but sniping in Arma 2, the military simulator, is just sort of a really interesting experience for me, intellectually almost. And this is probably the worst endorsement I can give anything, but sniping in Arma 3 kind of makes me feel like I'm doing a high school level geometry problem or something. So and it's sort of more of a critique of Arma 2's systems than the gun itself, because there aren't like a lot of interesting animations. The sound isn't really, doesn't like fill me with some endorphins or something like that. But it's the problem solving I have to do when I snipe in Arma 2. So that's because there's a scope dialing mechanic in Arma 2, and it's really simple. You just hit page up or page down to sort of determine the range that the center of your scope is at, like, in hundreds of meters. So if you think a target is 400 meters away, you're going to dial it into 400 meters and aim in, center of mass. But what I have to do in Arma 2 is, I have to sort of deliberately pick my spot. I have to be patient. It matters what stance I'm in, but beyond that, I actually have to estimate range. The game isn't telling me this guy is this far away. So I have to look at a map and say, okay, I think I'm here on the map, and I think my enemy is here on the map, and this is this many hundreds of meters. So I need to aim right about here, and I need to read the sort of the scope millidots and things like that, and estimate. And
if you were the Terminator, I imagine all the grids on the screen coming into your view.
Yeah. And it's just like all those series of decisions matter. What I do matters, and that level of fidelity is something I don't experience in other games. Down to the fact that Arma 2 actually simulates the bullet fires from the chamber. It doesn't fire from the front of the weapon. It doesn't fire from your crosshair. It's actually in the chamber and it leaves the chamber. And of course, the way it simulates bullet drop is really interesting and significant. It's realistic in the sense that at short ranges, it's actually high-powered rifles. It's lobbing the bullet upward, and then it sort of comes back down parabolically. With whatever your scope is dialed in at. So all that detail is just really satisfying, cerebrally, I guess.
Right. I just imagine myself being that poor guy who's just sitting there eating his lunch, while Evan's back there, fiddling with the dial and calculating distance and all that. And I'm just
that's
oh
me
man,
and DayZ.
This is great baloney.
But I do step back and take a moment to appreciate it when I get sniped from that far away, because I'm like, yeah, that guy had to do some serious math to figure out where I was before I even heard the shot.
That's really thoughtful.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And I might have just lost a bunch of really good items, but
as you're bleeding out, you're like, I can respect that.
You worked for it. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Logan, what about you? Another one?
Well, another one for me. Okay, it's very similar, I admit, to the stake gun, but there's just something about these projectile guns that I just love. It's the HV Penetrator from FEAR.
Yeah.
The FEAR series. Okay. First of all, it's called the Penetrator, which is a little edgy, and it's sort of an alignment of everything that I love. The sound effect of the basic, it fires these metallic spikes, and it's just like the spike gun from Blade, the first movie they used, which is it's like a modification of a Benelli M3 Super 90. Can't believe I remembered that shotgun that fires spikes instead. And I remember in the first movie he goes poof, poof, and he just sort of nails this vampire to the wall by his hand. And that's what this one does in FEAR. You can just go do 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 do. But the magic occurs when you go into slow-mo. And then you can you see all these guys come out of an exit and they start fanning out. And you drop into slow-mo and you just go boom, 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 and it just feels so right. Sadly, not everything sort of, they don't react to the first hit, and sometimes you have to get them a couple times.
Yeah.
But and then the last one, the killing shot is the one that makes them fly backwards or stick to the wall or a column or something like that. But still, huge payoff every single time throughout the entire game.
I'm seeing a theme in your guns, Logan. Anything that sort of expresses the physics and momentum of the projectile.
Absolutely.
I think there's also something to, it sounds strange, but firing a very small particle. Some games, some weapons, you feel like you're firing tennis balls or golf ball sized particles where, I sort of clip their head, but it sort of gives me credit anyway.
Right.
But there's something interesting about firing something that precise.
That's funny, and that you mentioned physics too, because that didn't even occur to me. That's it. That's the satisfaction I get, is the reaction and being able to to line things up in just a certain way, and everything happens just the way you anticipated. Because you know what the rules are. You know how fast everybody's going. You have to account for speed and distance and all that, and then just the moment you click the mouse and you pull the trigger and you hear that oh.
Yeah, sort of the ratio of output to input. You get ragdoll, you get a particle effect, you get a muzzle flash, you get sound. There's a lot happening there.
And then it's just like endorphins,
Totally.
So, yeah.
Right. Well, see, when I play multiplayer, nothing ever goes the way I plan it. So, the guns I gravitate to in multiplayer shooters are the ones that just cause maximum destruction with minimum input. The Brass Beast in TF2 is a favorite of mine. It takes the heavy, it makes him even heavier. Just that feeling of being someone who's not super skilled with all these ballistic sniper calculations, and you can just spray it across a room and everybody goes down. You know, you've got your Uber charge or whatever going on, and people are scared of it. They're running to get out of the way. You feel like, you feel like a boss for whatever 15 seconds that you're on this rampage with that gun. And the fact that you can see another heavy that's using a different gun, and you're like, we get into a duel, I'm gonna win because this does more damage.
Nice.
So, you know, you're the king of the jungle, so to speak, when you have that going on.
Pretty convincing steampunk aesthetic on that.
I do,
too.
yeah. I like the steampunk kind of, you know, the rails and
the gun looks like a train.
It's classy, right? Yeah, it looks like you're shooting people with a train.
That reminds me of the particle cannon from Wolfenstein.
Oh my gosh.
The 2009 one, you know, because all the enemies would turn into skeletons. It was like, you know, Medal of Honor meets Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
And then they're gone.
Well, the commonality between those weapons is sort of that it has a spin-up time.
Yeah,
you know, you hold,
exactly.
Right.
You hold mouse 1 and it takes a second or two before it can actually fire.
Yeah.
And that moment of anticipation is sort of like an inhale. The weapon is inhaling before it just fills the air with terrible things.
Like, oh, let's do this. That's my impression of the.
That's a pretty cool mechanic in general. I mean, it suits high-powered weapons anyway.
Right.
Right.
On the enemy side, I got to imagine they're anticipating that as well. But they're, you know, getting scared.
Crap.
Here it comes.
Yep.
So I mentioned Arma, but on the more arcadey side, you know, I think we think of Quake and Unreal Tournament as just classic shooters. Both of them came out in 1999. What a year! But the Flak cannon is just that's the standout gun for me in both of those games. I mean, we kind of think of it as a shotgun on mouse 1 and a grenade launcher on mouse 2, I guess. But it's so devastating, and it was sort of one of the first games to take advantage of a ricochet mechanic in multiplayer. And I guess the Ripper also in Unreal Tournament took advantage of that. This sort of buzzsaw blade shooting weapon that bounced off walls.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Flak cannon, I think there's something really interesting about it fires shrapnel, but the particle size of what it's shooting. I mean, in any other game, it's basically a shotgun. It's spreading something.
Yeah.
But the fact that you can see every pellet, it's sort of a natural, like really good source of feedback. You know? And bouncing it, I mean, whether like you're in a low gravity situation and bouncing off the floor in front of somebody to ricochet into them, bouncing it around a wall blindly.
Yeah.
And you also have to be careful at short ranges not to hit yourself.
Right.
There's a lot of skill involved in all those maneuvers. And on the grenade launcher side, obviously, it's just a devastating bomb that you're throwing that, you know, throws more shrapnel out. And I don't know, aesthetically, there's some cool things happening. Do you guys know, like the grenade launcher, like the shell that it fires actually has a smiley face on the front of it. And so, you know, sometimes an enemy can see that.
It's the little thing.
Exactly.
It is the little things. That's pretty hilarious. Very late 90s kind of a aesthetic in that way.
You're saturating a hallway with death. That's what that weapon does.
Smiling death.
Exactly. Yeah.
But ultimately, I just feel like I'm firing these like big kernels of metallic corn at people. Terrific gun.
I remember probably some of the finest memories I have in multiplayer is chasing somebody around with the Flak gun. You know, kind of. They're skipping around, so I'm missing them. I'm just sort of grazing them a bit. Then they turn a corner, and the final kill is the ricochet. You know, they speed around a corner, you just hit the wall, and it goes dunk, dunk, and they're out. Oh,
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Flak cannon duels are really special.
They're spectacular. It's just chaos. You know, it's wonderful.
Collateral damage all over the place.
You know, you can make a movie just out of those clips.
That's it.
You know, wrap a little story in there. They're angry at each other because one reason or another. But, you know.
Right.
Sounds good. All right, so those are some of our favorite guns here at PC Gamer. We'd love it if you subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. We're going to have more videos like this in the future, of course. And let us know what guns you'd contribute to this conversation. What are your favorite guns? What makes them interesting? What makes them feel interesting in a game?
Feel just right.
Feel just right.